Hi, and welcome to In-Fisherman, the world's largest multi-species fishing communication network. In-Fisherman produces the highest quality fishing videos available, combining the experience of the best fishermen in the world to give you the information you need to become a better angler. Here's some of the species you'll find covered in In-Fisherman videos.
Learn how to put more of America's most sought-after game fish in your boat with one of the many bass videos from In-Fisherman. Become an expert bass fisherman with everything from buzzbaits to crankbaits to jig worms. Learn how to catch big bass whether they're shallow, deep, or on the flats, largemouth or smallmouth. You'll catch more bass by watching In-Fisherman videos.
Hey, with over 15 videos on walleye fishing, even the most experienced walleye angler will find information that'll help improve your success.
If you fish with jigs or rigs, trolling or cranking on rivers, reservoirs, or lakes, In-Fisherman has a walleye video for you. From professional tricks to advanced systems, no one can show you more about catching walleyes than In-Fisherman.
If you like to hunt for really big fish, we got a selection of videos just for you from In-Fisherman.
Whether it's pike, muskie, just big fish in general, In-Fisherman will show you the how, where, and when. Increase your odds of catching a trophy by using the tips and techniques from the In-Fisherman staff.
If you're one of the 10 million anglers that loves to hunt catfish, In-Fisherman catfish videos are must viewing.
These comprehensive videos give you the location and presentation information you need. Spring, summer, or fall, you'll be catching more cats. Besides the videos we've already mentioned, you'll find videos on crappies, panfish, stripers, Canada, stream trout, lake trout, ice fishing, and more in the In-Fisherman video library.
Let In-Fisherman videos help you to catch more and bigger fish.
This portion of In-Fisherman is brought to you by America's Truck Stop, the new Dodge. The more you look, the more you'll know. The rules have changed. Al, Ron, and James Lindner present Few fish travel so far, jump so high, fight so hard, and exhilarate so many. Steelhead Strategies, hosted by In-Fisherman magazine editor Matt Straw.
Well, I hope this is everything. Hey, I'm glad you could join us on our annual spring steelhead trip. But what's up with this? You're not ready. Well, hopefully by the end of this video you will be, because you know, steelhead, like any other fish, what it takes to catch them could fill volumes. What we're going to focus on in this video is how to take fish on bait presentations like spawn, grubs, wigglers, and the rigging and the methods it takes to rig those baits. Also, we're going to look at how to find fish in rivers, the seasonal movements of steelhead in rivers, and how to approach steelhead in rivers. So hop in, come on, we got a lot of ground to cover. What a gorgeous day. It's a beautiful spring day. There's steelhead in the river. Let's get rigged up. First of all, you're going to need a rod. We're going to talk a little bit about rods later on. A reel, basically all you need to make sure you have is a reel with a good smooth drag. Set this aside. Now waders, you got to have some good neoprene waders. The water's cold in steelhead country. Neoprenes are the best insulator, and they're generally pretty tough, but you should also have some wader repair material along with you whenever you go. Polarized sunglasses are critical. You've got to be able to see into the water and cut the glare to see the steelhead. And a good hat, a brim, to keep the sun off your glasses and keep the glare off your glasses is a good idea. And the vest. Full metal jacket. This is your armor right here. This is what carries everything you need. Now, let's start out with terminal tackle. Basically, you got to have some hooks. Carry a lot of different styles and sizes of hooks. A compartmentalized box like this is a good idea. Carry a few hooks of different types. I've got some upturned eyes here for snelling. And I've got some downturned eyes here for just tying onto leaders. And another compartment here for taking care of swivels. Little barrel swivels to tie on your leaders with. Now, sinkers. Basically, you need a range of sinkers from about a BB up to a 0. Now, on this particular stream that I'm fishing, I know that a number 3 is about perfect, or a number 7. If I use, so I've got just a couple of different sizes here. I've got some number 3s, and I've got some number 5s and some number 7s here. And I know that a couple of 7s will usually get me down to most holes, or one of these larger sinkers. Basically, you just need a little handy compartmentalized box, or just a single compartment like this to handle all these sinker needs. Now for float fishing, I use different sinkers. I use soft shot because you're putting it right on your line. And having a little shot carousel like this is a real handy thing. You've got large ranging down to micro shot, little tiny shot, so that you can balance your float perfectly. And we'll get into that in detail later on. Now, for fishing floats, you need a range of floats, a range of sizes and types and styles. And basically a stream float, as we'll get into later, is a float with a body up high on the stem, and I have a variety of sizes in here. A big billows pocket is really nice for carrying lots of floats. Also, you have to have a few of this type of float. This is the kind of float you put on your leader when you're fishing bottom. And these are basically cheaters and corkies, and a few little winged cheaters here, like these. These keep your rig up off the bottom so you don't snag. They slide right down up against your hook. Okay, the next thing you have to have are some leader material spools. And leaders in the Midwest are going to range, I have leader material in here ranging from size 2-pound test all the way up to 8-pound test. And the reason for having the various sizes of leader is because I've seen it happen so many times. The guy fishing the lightest line will hook the most fish, but you don't want to get crazy about it. Use the heaviest line that conditions will allow. If the water's cloudy or turbulent, you can use a heavier line, and use the heaviest line that the fish will tell you how hard you can. But basically you need some abrasion resistant, tough line, and I have it in a range of colors from brown to green to clear to try to hide the line as best I can. You're also going to need some accessories for your float fishing needs. Now, what I have in here are some tubing, extra tubing for attaching your floats to your line. And I also have in here some float stops. Now when you're fishing some really deep runs, you're going to have some sliding slip floats and some float stops of various types. I've got neoprene stops and also the knotted, threaded kind. Now also in this pocket I have an extra little hook pack. In case I lose my compartmentalized box somewhere on the stream, I'm hedging against the potential for a problem there. So this is just basically a little accessories pocket. Now up here, I've got some scent. Scent is really critical. I can't tell you how many times I've added scent to my presentation and turned right around and caught a fish on the next cast. Something to hide your scent. Steelhead can smell like bloodhounds, and you have to put a little scent on your fingers sometimes before you rig, and put a little bit on your presentation, on your hook, your jig, whatever you're using, in order to mask your human scent at least, if not to stimulate some biting activity. Also in this pocket I have a little emergency pack of spinners and a little lip balm, something, you know, to make sure that you stay comfortable out there in the water so that you can concentrate on fishing. All right, other accessories you're going to need: a pair of hemostats to get those hooks out when they're buried really deep so you can get the fish back into the water quickly, and a pair of clippers for clipping off the tag ends on knots. Can be very handy. You also have to have, and this is a critical little accessory, a stream thermometer gauge. Your thermometer gauge is perhaps the most important piece of equipment in your vest, and we'll show you why later on. Now, the last thing that you really need in your vest are, of course, some plastics, or if you're bait fishing, you have to have a few hedges against losing your bait or using up all your bait. Now, in this pocket, I've got some plastic eggs. Plastic eggs, you should carry plastic eggs for, especially, they work very well in fast water. You don't always have to use bait. The eggs coming out of fish can be a variety of colors. Now these match basically the size of salmon eggs. Now here you see some eggs that look more or less the size of steelhead eggs. Having different colors is critical. The eggs coming out of different fish are not the same color. And basically the watercolor has a lot to do with how these look in the water too. So having different colors is important. They're very color conscious fish, so different colors are important. Also, different styles of plastic are critical. And I've got in here some tubes. Now, white tubes are very, very good with things like waxworms and maggots, and they're very good for steelhead in a lot of rivers all across the country. I've used these to catch fish out west. I've used them in Michigan, Wisconsin, a lot of different rivers around the country. White's a good color, but also you want some natural colors to match the coloration of nymphs and little crustaceans in the water. Steelhead will feed on things like crayfish and nymphs. So it's good to have some natural colors like these pumpkin seed, some orange with black spots, some black ones you can see in here. There's a variety of colors. Also, I've got in here some other things to approximate the size, shape, and color of caddis larvae, which can be an important food item for steelhead in a lot of streams across the country. These little power wigglers can be dynamite added to a jig underneath a float. And I've got some other plastics here that are different shapes. These look like little crustaceans, but they could also look like a nymph to a steelhead in a stream. And some little tiny micro sandworms that look like a lot of different critters that crawl around down there. And these can be used in bottom presentations as well as under a float. Now what you want to match these with, most of the time you're matching these presentations with jigs. Jigs for presenting baits under floats, or also presenting these tubes I showed you. You see I've got a few tube heads here and some basic round heads in all the different colors that might be attractive to steelhead. Some very neutral colors here for very bright days like today, and some very bright colors for dark cloudy water. We're going to get into these in a lot more detail a little later on. And one last tip, you should have, if you're going to do some float fishing, a little floatant in your vest. This, applied to the line just above your float, will keep the line from sinking, and it makes it easier to mend your line, to keep the line from getting dragged downstream ahead of the float that pulls your float along in an unnatural manner. And there's a lot of different styles of floatant on the market. It's basically a paste. Mucilin is one. This is Slim's Fly Rise. There's a lot of them. And that just about covers it. I think we're ready to go. I think we're ready to go fishing. Let's get down there and see what we can do today. Pretty fish. Look at her tail. She looks like she's been spawning already. But obviously she hasn't, because the water temperature is still in the 30s. It's very cold. And these fish in conditions like this are going to stage in water like this down here. And we're going to describe that for you in a second. Let me get this fish back in the water. There she goes. Like I said, you have to know your river. You have to know the timetable. Each river has its own clock, and you have to know when to be there. A lot of the fishing that you do doesn't begin when you reach the water's edge. It starts on the phone. You do a little research, you do a little calling, you call a biologist, call a tackle shop, call a fisherman, maybe a guide or two, and you find out when the peak times occur on your river. Now the advantage of that is, you know when the peak times occur, you know when to be at which river when. Then, of course, you have to be able to fine-tune. You have to understand also that weather and conditions have a lot to do with exact location, so that you can fine-tune where you're going to be, what segment of river to fish when.
Steelhead are amazing fish. They survive the metamorphosis from fresh to salt water, then reverse the process, coming back to freshwater streams where they were born to start the cycle all over again. They can travel hundreds of miles upriver, then simply beat the living bejabbers out of you and your equipment. They're airborne commandos of the first rank, still catching air long after other fish would be sucking wind. They're tough, strong, and beautiful to behold. Every steelhead river in the world has its own clock. Each individual stream has its own temperature profile and exists within its own special latitude, its own altitude, and its own microenvironment on the surface of the planet. Therefore, runs peak at different times depending on where the river is, north or south, east or west. Some rivers have 2 or more runs, some have only 1. In western states and provinces from California north through British Columbia, steelhead rivers tend to have summer and winter runs. In the Great Lakes region and in Alaska, steelhead rivers tend to have fall and spring runs. An important thing to remember, however, is that no matter where steelhead live, they spawn in late winter and in spring, generally from February through May. And in most regions, spawning peaks in March or April. What that means to the angler is this: summer and fall steelhead don't have to run. If conditions aren't favorable, they will continue to stage near river mouths, in drowned river mouth lakes, in estuaries, or out in the ocean or the Great Lakes. If the spawning period is a long time off, migrations will be less urgent. And it also means this: if you know the runs in your rivers, if you know when runs tend to start, and especially when they peak, you'll know if you're on the stream early or late in the run, which tells you a great deal about where fish should be in the system and what kind of water they should hold in.
Yeah. Pretty little hen, a silver spring fish. Spring run hen. There she goes.
Many things cue steelhead to run. Day-length cues are important. Steelhead have an internal calendar that ticks away, and within this calendar is a window of perfect opportunity. Thousands of years of running rivers and trusting their eggs and progeny to the elements have imprinted this perfect time to run into their genetic makeup. Water temperature, both in the river and in the lake or ocean, and water levels in the river also cue steelhead to run. Winter and spring runs generally begin as stream temperatures rise into the 40 to 45 degree range, where rivers get that cold at all. These runs are short, direct, and full of purpose. Steelhead make directly for spawning areas, pausing only to rest in well-defined areas. Summer runs only occur in streams that have cool enough temperatures in summer to support steelhead, 70 degrees or less. And fall runs in the Great Lakes in Alaska generally begin as stream temperatures dip down below the 60-degree mark. Summer and fall runs are less direct. Spawning is months away, sometimes half a year away. Steelhead meander, cavort, porpoise, and take their time. There is less sense of urgency and no real motivation to get up the river unless there's a long distance to cover, or unless the river gets so low in winter that steelhead can't progress upstream to spawning areas at that time. Those two factors make steelhead move at a more predictable rate. Otherwise, steelhead in summer and fall will find comfortable pools and runs, spending days or weeks there, and they winter over in the stream, holding in the same pools for most of the winter.
So much brush in the water. So first there's the challenge of hooking the fish, and then you still got to land them, get around all the brush, but what a pretty river. Hey! Oh yeah, big fish. Oh no! Lost that fish.
Hey, we're using spawn today, and it's pretty early in the spring and it's cold, and this is the most effective bait, but sometimes flies might outproduce spawn, so you should have a selection handy, like a classic skunk, a few nymphs, and some glow bugs like this. Perfect for... But as you can see, in cold conditions, spawn bags seem to work the best. We better go see what little thing we got.
Bring the coffee!
What are you yelling about?
Bring the coffee! Got something to show you. Look what I got.
Oh,
Huh?
nice fish.
Oh, that makes
Yes.
up for the one that I lost a little bit earlier, wouldn't you say?
At least, that's about an 11-pound buck.
Yeah, I'm sorry you weren't here to see that. The fish hit just where it was a while ago. He didn't move 20 feet from up or down river. Just didn't do
Really?
that much. Yeah, he's a tough guy. He's a big one, isn't he?
Big bruiser.
But I tell you what, this deal about steelhead fishing, these fish are so big, they fight so hard, and this scenery is so spectacular that I think that this is something that almost everybody should have an opportunity to experience.
They put you through your paces, don't they?
Oh, what a fish.
There he goes. There's the taker. There's the taker right there. Whoa. Whoa. Oh, that's a horker. That's the way to open a show. This is a horker of a steelhead. We're steelhead fishing, and this is a good fish. And we had to map a strategy today to find fish by looking at conditions. I'm going to talk about conditions and how they affect how fish position in rivers. And this is something you can use, this is information you can use to intercept all kinds of fish that migrate up rivers. It'll give you some clues at least as to how they position themselves according to conditions. Amazing. You know, if I didn't know different, I'd say I landed this fish a little while ago. It looks just like a fish I landed a little while ago. Oh my. Couldn't be two fish with the same exact markings on them. But I caught this fish about an hour ago. And if that isn't testimony to catch and release, I don't know what is. Oh. Look at that. Pretty buck steelhead. Yo! Been in the river a little while. It's going to be in the river a little while longer. There are 3 keys to locating fish in rivers according to conditions. And this works for any fish that migrate up rivers. Those 3 keys are water clarity, water level, and water temperature. Right now I'm taking a temperature reading because it's going to help me determine not only whether there's steelhead or a lot of steelhead in the river, but also whether or not they're holding in a deep pool, or whether they're holding in a run or a chute, or whether they're holding in slow frog water. Right now the water temperature is 40 degrees, and that tells me a lot. Take a look at this about water temperature and how it affects location.
Water temperature can be used as a guideline to determine where steelhead are within a river system. The boundaries of their world in terms of temperature are 31 degrees Fahrenheit and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Even moving water can't get much colder than 31 degrees Fahrenheit without freezing. And at the other extreme, water in the 70-degree range can be fatal for steelhead over prolonged periods. Steelhead fare better in the lower extreme at 31 degrees Fahrenheit and will do everything they can to avoid 70-degree water. When summer steelhead are faced with water temperatures exceeding 60 degrees, they require shade, fast water, and increased oxygen levels. This restricts their location to riffles and rapids where broken water overhead blocks sunlight and where faster tumbling currents dissolve more oxygen. If possible, steelhead leave the warmer main river for cooler tributaries, even into streams where they do not spawn, a key locational element in summer. From 41 degrees Fahrenheit to about 57 degrees, steelhead have no temperature-based restrictions and might use the most diverse types of areas within the stream. The heaviest migration phases almost always occur in this range of temperatures. In fall, steelhead might be scattered throughout the system and in trickle phase, meaning meandering back and forth. But in long river systems or anywhere during the spring migrations, steelhead will concentrate behind barriers and near spawning habitat in these temperatures. In cold water from 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 38 degrees, steelhead tend to stage or hold. Steelhead are once again restricted to very specific types of habitat. The best pools in this temperature range are dish-shaped and located in flat, low gradient areas on straight segments of river where the river widens. Depths are not usually extreme, somewhere in the 4 to 5 foot range, and dark bottom is a major plus. These wide pools with dark bottoms act as solar collectors. The current slows and evens out. Steelhead seldom prefer overhead swirling currents, cover, or shade in very cold water. Deep, slow pools in the lower end of the system are also key spots in this temperature regime.
Oh, there it is. As you can see, the water's a little cloudy, and cloudy water is an advantage and a disadvantage. It's an advantage because you can approach the fish a little closer, but it's a disadvantage because it makes the fish spread out, so you've got to cover more water. But it's also an advantage because it brings these fish into the river. When the water rises and gets a little cloudy in the right temperature range, the fish run up. There we go, buddy. Get you back in the water. Whoa!
In clear water, steelhead tend to hide from the sun on bright days. Overhead cover and broken water provide shade and concealment from predators. They also hold inside shade lines, where bluffs or high banks throw deep shadows on the water. Steelhead in clear water are very skittish. Presentations must be made from a distance. Average or moderate water clarity opens more of the river to the steelhead. They feel more secure in mid-river areas and under flat water. On cloudy days and during the low light periods of dawn and dusk, steelhead can be found in surprisingly small and unusual holding areas, sometimes close to the bank in shallow water where the river is moderately clear to slightly off clear. In cloudy water, steelhead tend to prefer the inside of bends, where flow is less of an obstacle to their upstream progress. They feel very secure in shallow water and can be approached more closely than at any other time.
This is a hot day. This is a really good day because the water levels are perfect today. And water level is so important because it determines where the fish hold in the river.
When streams are low and clear, the most pressing need becomes concealment. Steelhead like a dark bottom in these conditions where it's difficult to see them from above. They hide under overhead cover like fallen trees, or they seek broken water where obstructions like boulders break up the surface, making it difficult to see them. In average flows, steelhead are less skittish. Their world opens up. but are still restricted to pools and riffles by the need for concealment. In most conditions, they tend to use the inside edge of classic pools where dark, hard bottom meets light, soft areas of sand or gravel in average flows. In high, cloudy water, steelhead once again are restricted. During migration modes, their most pressing need becomes finding the easiest route upstream. They get out of the main flow where silt stings their gills, seeking eddies and slack water where silt has a chance to settle. In a classic bend pool like this one, look for them on the inside of the bend, out of the main flow.
Oh, another one. Just remember, fish have to adapt to changing conditions, and you should too. Get you off here, Ronnie.
Spring and fall mean steelhead to a lot of anglers. Steelhead, a migratory species of rainbow trout, annually returning to rivers on the West Coast and the Great Lakes to spawn. The eggs or spawn laid in the river are an important facet of the steelhead's life cycle. Not only do they mean reproduction of the species, but they're an important food source.
Oh, she's screaming.
Powerful fish, I tell you that. We haven't been in this pool for, 10 minutes, and Matt's already hooked up. And we're going to be talking about drifting baits. And Matt's got some real unique tricks, I think, when it comes to drifting spawn bags, which is one of the all-purpose baits for steelhead.
Get him upstream up here. Coming. There we go. Like nothing. There he is. Oh. Pretty fish. Snapped me.
Oh, that's all right. We saw the fish.
Pretty fish.
Huh?
Boy, tell you what, they just won't quit today.
Well, at least we got a look at him. I tell you what, Matt, let's show everybody the two different types of spawn bag riggings. You know, what you've got right there, you say, is something that you would use to move along the bottom, and that's going to float up off the bottom. And I've been using a float, on the other hand, and the float keeps the bait up off the bottom anywhere. So this one's a sinker. Is that right?
That's right. I got one little bead in there for a little dash of color.
Bead? What do you mean by the bead now?
That float bead is styrofoam, and that will float the bag off bottom if you put enough in there. Now, if you were to drop that bag in the water, it'd sink. This bag will float right along the top.
And those are also attractors, huh?
Right. So when I'm drifting bottom with a rig like this, with a couple of split shot off from a dropper, this float bag is going to hang up in the current a little bit, especially in a slower pool like we're fishing. It's going to stay up off bottom a little bit better. Whenever your sinkers lift up off bottom, this is going to rise.
Okay. Well, let's get back at it.
Let's go get them.
Now, if you're going to be successful with river fishing, you have to understand how to drift baits efficiently. And Matt, I guess you pretty much got that down to a science.
Yeah, drifting bait, it takes a little bit of science and a lot of experience. You just learn how to drift a bait through varying current lanes and varying speeds, and the most important thing in drifting baits is learning how to master a variety of casts. You've got to be able to cast cross-stream, downstream, and upstream in order to match the variety of situations that a stream is going to throw at you. You're going to have snags hanging over the river. You're going to have fast current lanes close to you and slow current lanes on the other side of the river, and that's where a long rod comes in to hold the line over the faster current lanes and keep the bait down on bottom in that slower water across the river. And body position has a lot to do with it. And of course, another important thing that you don't see a lot of guys doing that they should be doing is leading their bait downstream with their downstream hand. Gives you a little bit longer, more extended, natural drift. The whole idea of this is of drifting this bait is that it's a free-floating bait. Eggs are in the stream this time of year when the fish are spawning, and a free-floating bait is coming. They see a lot of natural eggs, in other words, coming to them, and they're just floating free in the current. So you've got to try to imitate that action as much as possible. And the best way to do that is to lead the bait downstream with your downstream hand. That gets the fulcrum, or the point of where the line is at your rod. I actually have the point, or the fulcrum point is 10 feet downstream of me right now, so I'm extending that natural drift downstream a little bit.
Any situations in rivers where you're drifting a bait, typically it's very helpful if the rod is a little bit longer than the typical rod. So most steelhead rods run 8, 9, 10 feet. And for floats these days, there's a lot of guys who have gone to 11, 12, and even in some situations 14-foot rods. The length helps you manipulate your bait, so I can keep line up off the water and thus get a truer drift. And if I want to move the bait over just a little bit, I've got a little bit more rod to move it.
The key to drifting for steelhead with bait is to weight your rig properly so that you're just rolling along at current speed. If you're dragging bottom, if you're dragging and snagging, that's too much weight. You've got to trim down on your weight. If you're obviously not touching bottom or only touching here and there or just straight out in front of you, you need to add weight. And the steelhead are going to be facing into the current. They're moving upstream and casting out in front of them and letting it drift right down to them. And the idea is to get it down on bottom, down where they live, and hit them on the nose. And the only way to do it is to move it at current speed, because they know what current speed is and they know what it looks like. So you have to adjust your weight for every run and for every current speed that you're going to face. So what that means is often you're going to have to, for each hole or each drift or each run, you're going to have to adjust the weight of your rig to match those conditions. Oh man, this fish has got warp drive capabilities.
I said we've had some substantial trouble landing fish in the last hour here. I've lost 3.
Yeah. All right.
Yo, Bubba! Is that a pretty
That's a
fish?
nice fish. Okay, we're tying some spawn bags on the bank, the stream here. And what we're doing, after cutting up the netting into squares, the size of bag that you want, we're putting in a few float beads. And I put those in first, plop in enough eggs. Of course, you determine how many eggs you put in each bag by, you know, what the fish are hitting. They will hit different size bags according to stream condition. And right now we're experiencing some pretty good success with smaller bags and medium-sized bags. This is about a medium-sized bag here. This is spider thread. This is really good for tying bags because it saves a step. You don't have to tie a knot with this stuff. It's really just a real thin, stretchy monofilament. And all you do is you just wrap it about 8 times, 8, 10 times, stretch it tight, clip it, trim the excess netting, you're ready to roll. Okay, this spawn came from a female about 4 or 5 days ago, and it hasn't been frozen yet. It's been air dried in the refrigerator so that it's not mushy, it's not too tacky, it's just right. These eggs are rubbery and firm. They'll take a little pressure. They'll last a long time. They're really, this is really prime bait. When spawn is fresh and not treated with any chemicals or any kind of boric acid or borax or anything like that, it's really a much better bait. And a lot of guys like to treat their baits with various things, and I understand that that does work and it does catch fish, but I happen to believe that this stuff is a lot better. Take that spider thread, wrap it on there about 8 times, snip it. He's got a fish on. We're not tying too many bags, the fish are rolling. Fish! Hey!
Unbelievable. You let them rest for just a second like that.
Bad news.
What?
Bad news is about 3 feet in front of that big snag.
Well, let me walk down along the side here. Maybe I can spook around.
Yeah, try to spook that fish up. Oh, I got him coming up.
Said I think we're going to finally land one. Action at the end. There's always that, I tell ya. Fish. Oh, man, show me that fish. That's beautiful. Look at the kite. Oh, man.
Big hook jaw. Yeah.
And I'll tell you something, that jump I'll remember for an awful long time. That was spectacular.
Wow, that's a pretty fish.
Steelhead are prone to attack flies, spinners, spoons, crankbaits, minnow baits, jigs, even surface lures. But the emphasis of this video is on bait fishing techniques. When presented correctly, the real thing is a deadly approach in all conditions. Bait fishing techniques are the cornerstone of stream fishing methodology, a solid foundation to build on. The eggs of salmon, steelhead, and trout are the most common baits for steelhead, and it's not surprising that spawn has become the mainstay bait for steelhead. In fact, the effectiveness of spawn in so many conditions gave steelheaders tunnel vision for many years, but other options exist. The most overlooked bait for steelhead is the common garden variety worm. Night crawlers, redworms, leafworms, or any variety of earthworm will take steelhead, especially in spring and summer, and especially after heavy rains that naturally wash these creatures into the river by thousands. A single hook through the middle of half a nightcrawler or a whole redworm retains their natural undulating appeal when worked along bottom with split-shot rigs. Under a stream float, run the hook into the nose of the worm for less resistance to the current. Crustaceans like crayfish, sand shrimp, and prawns are deadly steelhead baits that just began achieving popularity over the past couple of decades. Crayfish can be presented whole or by cutting the fleshy tail into chunks. Sand shrimp are generally rigged whole, while prawns are cut into chunks. Chunks can be soaked in coloring solutions for added appeal. Steelhead are extremely color conscious, so coloring these baits can be highly effective at times. Summer is the best time for crayfish, though fall and winter are prime times for using prawns or sand shrimp out west. Rigging for bottom with pencil leads or snag-resistant weights called slinkies are the most natural ways to present crayfish or shrimp, though chunks work well under floats too. Tiny live baits excel in winter or summer when rivers are low and clear. Waxworms, maggots, and stonefly or mayfly nymphs presented on light line with tiny jigs and small floats can produce multiple hookups when other baits produce zilch. Fine wire hooks with small barbs are critical for holding these delicate baits without damaging them. Minnows are productive in fall after rivers begin to cool and rise from autumn rains. Steelhead are extremely active in the months of September, October, and November when metabolisms are at a peak, yet spawning is still months away. Bait fish are important forage for steelhead in the Great Lakes and in the ocean. In fall, having recently arrived from big water, stream steelhead are more likely to have small trout or river chubs in their stomach than at any other time of the year, especially in the Great Lakes region. Use river minnows and hook them through the lips and present them with a bottom walking rig or a float rig. Use smaller minnows 1 to 2 inches with a large enough hook. The bend in the hook should be roomy enough to let the minnow slide out of the way during the hook set. The crucial advantage of alternative baits is the fact that so very few anglers take advantage of them. When every fish in the system has been hit on the head or hooked by the local hot lure or hot bait, an alternative becomes the best possible choice, something the fish haven't seen, something they're less likely to treat with suspicion.
Whoa! 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 I just want to let you go. Big broad crimson splashes. I was saying, you can tell when they start to get some color. When they first come in out of the ocean or the lake, they are bright silver. This fish has got a little color in it. Oh, in him, it's a buck. Nice buck. Whoa! We just showed you how to catch steelhead using spawn while drifting bottom. Let's show you another technique using a float to use the same bait. Ooh, let's get you back in the river. Big boy.
A jig under a bobber. A simplistic method used by millions of anglers chasing everything from panfish to walleyes. Well, except for isolated pockets around the country, jigs have not reached their proper status in the nation's trout vests. This will soon change when the word gets out on how effective this method is on trout. Let's join Matt Straw and guest Mike McLeod on the finer points of swim jigging.
All right. Catch fish like this, you need to make a natural presentation. And to make the most natural presentation under the circumstances I'm faced with today, means using jigs. Here we go. It's spring. The rivers are up, they're a little bit cloudy, and obviously there's steelhead in the rivers. The best way to catch steelhead in the rivers in conditions like this, obviously you can see we have a long straight stretches of river here. They're real long, they're very shallow, almost dish-shaped. There's a lot of gravel here. The fish can be almost anywhere. You need to cover a lot of territory with each drift, and the best way to accomplish that is with a float and a jig. Okay, the idea of fishing a jig and a bait under a bobber, or anything, whether it be steelhead or smallmouth or walleye in a river, it's a dynamic technique. The best way to accomplish it is to keep line off the water, and that means using a long rod, keep the rod high, and keep the line behind the float, or keep it off the water altogether, because if you get a bow and it starts to pull the float, it will pull the bait along at unnatural speeds. Fish know what current speed is, and they expect to see bait come down the river at current speed, especially bait that can't swim. In this case, we're using steelhead eggs, and obviously they have no motive capabilities of their own.
Selecting the right float is the first step. The power of the river should determine the shape and size of the float. Fast, broken water requires a round, buoyant shape. Slow, flat water calls for thin pencil shapes. The slower and clearer the water gets, the thinner, smaller, and more sensitive the float should be. The ideal river float has a tapered, pear-shaped body that slips under easily when fish strike. A thin stem through the body serves several functions. Line is secured at the top, making it easier to hold line off the water. And thin stem protruding beneath the body provides less surface area to catch the fastest currents in the river, which glide along about an inch under the surface film. If the float has a body, it should be high on the stem to ride the slower surface film. This slows the float to a speed more closely resembling the slower currents at the bottom of the river, where the bait might be.
Corner of her mouth there. Those light wire hooks tend to be pretty delicate. You have to take it easy. Broke that shank of that light wire hook right off. But with a light wire hook, you need a nice, long, light action rod. The tip has to be light, but you don't want the rod to be too wavy. It's important to have a rod that's stout enough to lift all of the rigging that you have. You've got sinkers, a jig, and a float. And you've got to lift that out of the water in order to drive the hook home. So you need backbone, and the length is important for keeping your line off the water, of course, when you're drifting the float. But it does take a different rod to work this system effectively.
Between the float and the bait is the shotting pattern. Lead split shot is needed for balance and should be placed on the line in a pattern that matches conditions. The key is to weight the line enough to stand the float and allow fish to pull it under without feeling resistance. Two basic shotting patterns include the bulk pattern, which groups all the shot in one place, and the bias or shirt button pattern, which spaces the shot evenly between the float and the bait. Bulking is best in fast flows over quick drop-offs or in cloudy water. And bias patterns work best for a slower drop in long, clear pools and work to keep the bait out in front of the float. Use the heaviest shot near the float and the tiniest shot about 6 inches to a foot from the bait.
What we're using are very small jigs. It's not important that the jig is big. The hook has to be big enough. It's important to find a strong enough hook and yet a light wire hook that you can set quickly into the fish. There are a lot of characteristics that make up a good steelhead jig in current. Let's examine that.
Jigs are important as stabilizers or anchors, keeping the bait down in the strike zone when mending line or manipulating the float. Weight and shape are the key factors. In dark, heavy flows, use jigs up to 1/4 ounce. In low, clear water under a bright sun, use a tiny 1/80th ounce jig on a light leader. 3 shapes are best adapted to current. These are round, bullet, and tube head styles. Whatever the jig or weight or style, it is absolutely critical for the jig to hang horizontally in the water. To achieve this, the eye of the jig hook should be positioned in the center of the head, and the knot should usually be placed right at the top of the eye. Test each jig to make certain it hangs correctly and constantly check the knot to keep it in the right position.
Oh, yeah. I tell you, it is fun to experiment. Half the fun of fishing for trout and steelhead is experimenting with new systems. And this system is deadly. See you later.
Water clarity, light conditions, and depth affect how well fish can see. Good fishermen consider these factors before choosing sizes and colors of baits and lures. But in rivers and streams, the extent of vision in fish affects much more than presentation. If one isn't careful, fish may not even consider the best of presentations.
Sometimes the most obvious things foil the attempts of fishermen to catch fish and have fun. And most fishermen understand that when fish are in a holding position in a stream, they can see forward, they can see to the side, and they can even see to the rear. I think most fishermen also know that they can see to the surface, but I wonder how many fishermen understand that fish can see beyond the surface.
They can definitely see above the surface, and that cone of vision they have extends out above the surface at an angle. It bends, the light bends as it hits the water, and if you can stay under that cone, you'll catch more fish.
All right, well, let's give her a try here. As you were telling me a while ago, Matt, when you're moving up on these fish, there's a couple of things that you have to consider in terms of how close you can get and how high you want to stand. Oh, there he went. How high you can actually stand. You know, when the water's muddy, you can do almost anything. And then with some species like catfish, well, they can't see all that well. But these guys, you got to be awful careful. And then, if it's raining, or if you got a lot of riffle on the water, of course, that breaks their cone of vision too.
Yeah, any kind of riffle on the water, or cloudy water, or if it's raining, anything that breaks up the surface.
So you think these are just all fresh fish poking right in here?
Yep. Just a hen. It's not small fish.
Yeah, pretty, huh? Oh man, look at that. Is that beautiful?
Pretty hen.
Those
Is she sweet?
Anyway, I'm just going to reach down with the forceps and get that hook out. Here we go.
Spunky critter.
Yeah. Oh, now.
There you
Let me
go.
have a look at the eye. Huh? See, oh man, pretty fish, huh? But look at, hold them straight up and down. And you see how their eyes turn? Yeah. As you said a while ago, they...
Oh, there she goes. Good job.
There are many factors that determine how well fish in rivers and streams can see above and below the water. In turn, this will affect how you approach the fish and the presentation needed to trigger them into biting. In clear water, high sunlight conditions, with little or no surface disturbance, high-riding fish have the optimum viewpoint for seeing movement above the surface. Under the same conditions, a fish that is deeper in the water has increased visibility under the water, but decreased visibility above it. The fish may be less conscious of your presence, but your presentation is under maximum scrutiny. Clear water and bright light call for small, natural, unobtrusive presentations. Spinner fishermen often use black or burnished blades in these conditions to reduce flash. Bait fishermen add less color and attraction to the package. Factors that limit the vision of stream fish are stained water, low light, and any increase in surface disturbance. Under these conditions, you can approach fish with less caution, which enables you to make shorter, more precise casts without spooking fish. But larger, more colorful baits or lures with increased vibration are needed to attract a fish's response.
Now, once you understand that the fish have this cone of vision, it affects the way that you approach streams. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're fishing for smallmouth or catfish, or as is the case here for steelhead. The universal aspects are you stay low when you enter the stream and for the first couple casts. All right, you also want to move from the downstream side to the upstream side. Remember that the fish are facing into the current, they're positioned into the current, and therefore the most important part of the cone is directly above them and probably just a little bit forward. Beyond that, you probably would want to wear clothing that tends to blend in, and particularly don't make any abrupt movements when you're in the stream. Did you see the fish?
Yeah, looks like a hen.
Jump?
No, it hasn't jumped yet. But she's got a lot of spunk. Go.
I love the way the rod goes like that.
Isn't it something? Ooh, they can turn a rod better than anything.
Well, those fish are so powerful. There,
Here she
coming up.
comes.
Oh, I thought you was going to jump. Oh, that's really something. Those fish are so powerful. In the springtime like this, what makes the difference between whether the fish jump or not? Is it water temperature?
A lot of times it's how fast the water comes up or something. They might run a long ways, come upstream. They're a little bit tired. And they don't fly as much.
Yeah,
when they've been sitting for a day or so, they'll
Coming
fly.
in shore there.
Oh, she's coming up top.
Here, I'll go down and get
Ooh,
Oh!
fat fish.
Yeah, look at
the
this.
girth on that.
Look at the, how come I've never seen one like that?
That's just full of eggs, I suppose, unless you just ate a carp.
I've never seen a steelhead that was so fat.
It looks like it ate a bowling ball for breakfast. Oh, that hook was just ready to pull out.
Aren't they beautiful? What a
Good
fish.
thing you nabbed it when you did.
Yeah. You know, now, where exactly was that fish holding?
Fish was sitting right in the middle of the stream, right on a transition between sand and gravel. Seems like all the fish lately have been sitting right on that transition area.
And chances are, in good a shape as he's in, he's going to go back to just about the same spot. And as a famous writer once said, it's not that fishing is so terribly important. It isn't. It's that everything else in life is equally as unimportant and a whole lot less fun. Yo!
Steelhead are such awesome fish. They survive the metamorphosis from fresh to salt water, and they run out in the big water, and then they come back to fight the currents, swim in heavy, powerful rivers, and it makes them powerful fish. We covered a lot of bait fishing techniques here today. There are a lot of other ways to catch steelhead, including artificials like spinners, spoons, plugs. But if you build a foundation of good bait fishing techniques, you'll be able to catch fish like this anywhere, anytime, any place. Oh, this is awesome.